Kaspa versus Iota, which altcoin will explode first? That's exactly the question thousands of crypto investors are asking themselves right now. In the next few minutes, I'll show you why one of these coins is massively underestimated and how you can find out whether you should still get in now. Welcome to 10x Crypto, your channel for honest, data-driven altcoin analysis. Kaspa and Iota, two completely different altcoins. Kaspa, proof of work. Block DAG technology, but not like Bitcoin. Instead, as mentioned with the block DAG architecture, thousands of transactions per second are possible. Currently, 10 blocks per second, and in the future, over 100 or more. Fast confirmation, high scalability, fair launch. That makes Kaspa extremely exciting for DeFi for ultra-fast transactions. On the other hand, there's Iota. Iota is actually also a DAG structure without traditional blocks. What's special is that the component we have here allows for almost everything. Transactions, so almost no fees. With this, Iota is of course targeting the Internet of Things market, such as supply chains, real-world assets, and global trade structures. They also want Iota to continue developing and to make the project increasingly decentralized. The question is, in the end, why could one of these two old coins be worthwhile? Kaspa scores points with fair distribution, high speed, and is extremely exciting. Iota, on the other hand, focuses on enterprise partnerships, works with the EU, and is active in the real-world asset market. So, two completely different approaches, but both are extremely exciting and, in terms of market cap, have huge upside potential. Today, let's take a look together, based on data, tokenomics, market metrics, and a comparison of the communities. At the end, there will be a clear conclusion. Which coin will explode first? Kaspa or Iota? Before we start the duel, grab yourself a coffee and leave a like for me. And if you want to become an insider, check out the 10x Insiders in my crypto networking community. It's free and you might find some of the smartest minds in the crypto space. Do you want to be part of it? Take a look at everything. I've linked everything in the video description. But, attention, a disclaimer. My channel is not financial advice, but purely for informational purposes. Now the duel, Iota versus Kaspa. First, let's look at market metrics. Market cap, Kaspa is around 2.2 billion, while Iota, at $753 million, is significantly lower. Circulating supply for Kaspa, 93% of the tokens are already on the market. That's almost everything, which is extremely strong. For Iota, it's 87%, which is also solid, still strong. Kaspa is valued higher here, but Iota theoretically has more potential. But in addition, Kaspa was ultimately launched fairly, whereas Iota had an ICO. In other words, Kaspa is more fairly distributed here than Ion. Next, let's look at the tokenomics of inflation. Kaspa still has about 7% mining emissions ahead of it. However, the inflation decreases due to geometric halvings. Iota, on the other hand, is more or less fixed. There is no staking with Kaspa, it uses proof of work. But Iota, for example, offers flexible staking rewards between 5 and 10%. This of course means for investors that Kaspa offers security through proof of work, but no returns. Iota, on the other hand, ultimately offers staking yield. That naturally sounds more interesting, at least for long-term holders. By the way, if you want to buy one of these two altcoins, you won't even find all altcoins on every exchange, but right now there's an interesting offer on my partner exchange. You can get a real bonus there. Take a look at everything. I'll link the QR code here, or otherwise in the pinned comment. Let's move on to the tech and the use case. Kaspa, as mentioned, relies on blocks. DRG technology creates 10 blocks per second and does so in parallel. But ultimately 100 are planned, so real high tech. This makes Kaspa extremely fast and efficient for DeFi and KRC20 tokens, and smart contracts might be coming as well. Iota, on the other hand, doesn't use a classic blockchain either, but rather a DAG structure, parallel blocks for low latency. Especially strong, almost everything. This, of course, makes Iota perfect for the Internet of Things, supply chain, and real-world assets. Conclusion here? Kaspa, ultra-fast, crypto narrative. Iota is more broadly positioned, more for real-world integration in industry. Now let's move on to the community. Kaspa already has a huge number of followers on X, and so does Iota. Both are about equal, but Kaspa is growing faster. And on-chain, it looks like Kaspa has more active wallets per day. Indeed. That's also extremely interesting. This means Kaspa thrives on an active community, while Iota is more enterprise-driven. For both, the concentration of votes is at about the same level, which is a positive sign. So, what about the vision and the narrative? Kaspa. Focus, speed, POV, decentralization, fair launch, community aspect, Iota. Strong partnerships, more support from the EU, for example, and large companies. The narrative is more about real-world assets, supply chain, deepen, and DeFi. And of course, that fits perfectly with the current trend, especially RWA and deepen, which are extremely hot narratives right now. Now let's move on to the conclusion and potential check. If you're looking for rapid adoption, fair. Distribution, high on-chain activity, then Kaspa is your coin. But it's still a risky bet. However, if you're more focused on long-term enterprise adoption, real-world applications, and partnerships, then Iota is interesting. Especially because the market cap is of course a bit lower. I'll now show my 10x ranking list. There you can see where both ultimately stand and which one is actually valued higher. On the 10x ranking list, I have all altcoins above 90. And the number keeps growing as I analyze more, so you can keep an overview in this whole hype market. If you're wondering where to find the 10x ranking list, check out my 10x Elite. I've pinned a comment about it, or in the video description, or you can just look here and scan the QR code. Yes, hello, and welcome to my chart analysis of Iota and Kaspa. First, let me briefly explain again. I use TradingView, which I think almost everyone knows, along with my own custom developed indicator. It shows me two things. First, for example, when a lot of people are selling and we enter oversold zones, a green dot appears. For me, that means it's an entry point, potentially worthwhile. But when a lot of people online are buying and we enter overbought zones, it's indicated with a red dot. For me, that means, okay, now I need to consider whether to take partial profits or exit the market entirely. The advantage of all this is simply that I have insight and an overview of the market, and I don't act blindly. For example, it's also good for dollar cost averaging entries, because otherwise you might just invest whenever you get your money during the month. Of course, that way you end up leaving quite a bit of money on the table. At least that's how it was for me. That's why I always look for the best entry points now. In any case, let's move on to Iota and take a look at it. Here we basically had a massive push, actually in December. Now it's been sold off again. Recently there was this flash crash. If you look at it, that was about 58%. That's pretty extreme. At the same time though, we've also pushed up almost 100% again in a relatively short time. So what does the situation look like for Iota right now? From my point of view, I would still wait for now because we haven't reached the absolutely oversold area yet. We haven't formed a big green dot yet. That means there's definitely still room to the downside, or rather the opportunity is simply still there. That's why with Iota, I would definitely rather wait for now. Now let's take a look at Kaspa together. What does the situation look like for Kaspa? Compared to Iota, we haven't been sold off as extremely, only 36%. That definitely speaks in favor of Kaspa. And then we pushed back up again, about 26 to 30%. What does it look like right now? As you can see, it's quite interesting. A green dot has formed. That means we've really entered the oversold area now. This could now crystallize into an exciting entry point. As I said, always do your own research, but in any case, based on the data, we definitely have a point here at the moment where you should start thinking and gathering more information. In any case, I personally see this as a good entry point. Of course, it could still go further down. By the way, if you want access to the 10x indicator to use it yourself in TradingView, you can get it in my 10x Elite, which I just mentioned earlier. You can find information about it in the video description in a pinned comment, or I'll link the QR code here again. If you're interested in the price scenarios and want the full analysis where I go really in depth, I'll link both analyses for you here now. Thanks for watching, and then I'll see you in a moment.